At my own company's all-hands meeting, my sister stood at the head of the table where I used to sit, and my parents smiled like they had already replaced me. I had built that company with my bare hands. Every contract, every client, every late night for 10 years, that was mine. And in one dinner, my family looked me in the eye and told me it was hers now. Here's the thing, I didn't fight back the way they expected. I didn't argue, I didn't beg, and I didn't break down. I built something better. And the moment they finally understood what I had done, there was nothing left for them to take. My name is Marcus. I'm 33 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've lived and breathed one thing: the company I built from nothing. I want to be honest about something right up front. I'm not a naturally dramatic person. I don't enjoy conflict. I never have. When things got tense at family dinners growing up, I was the one who changed the subject, who laughed off the uncomfortable moment, who found the middle ground and stood on it until everyone else calmed down. That's just who I was. Maybe that's why what happened hit me so hard. I genuinely never saw it coming. I started the company, I'll call it Arcline Tech, just after I turned 23. I had one client, one contract, and a laptop I'd bought secondhand. I was working out of my bedroom in a rented apartment that smelled like someone else's cooking. I had no investors, no co-founder, no backup plan. What I had was a specific skill set: software infrastructure consulting, the kind of unglamorous back-end work that keeps businesses running, and an almost stubborn belief that I could build something real from it. Slowly, I did. By year 3, Arcline had 6 full-time employees and a handful of clients I'd earned through referrals and relentless follow-through. By year 5, we'd landed our first enterprise contract, a regional logistics company that needed a full systems overhaul. That deal changed everything. It put us on the map, brought in revenue that let me hire senior talent, and for the first time I felt like I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. My parents were supportive in the early years in the way people are supportive when they're not sure you'll succeed. They'd ask how the business was going at Sunday dinners, nod politely when I explained what we were doing, and occasionally say something like, "That's great, Marcus. We're proud of you." It was kind. It was generic. It didn't feel like they fully grasped what I was actually doing, but I told myself that was fine. Not everyone understands this world. Then there was Sarah. My younger sister is 4 years behind me. She was always sharp, quick with words, socially confident in a way I never quite was. The kind of person who walks into a room and immediately finds the center of gravity. Growing up, she and I were close in the way siblings are when they're the only two in a family. Not always easy, but tight underneath all of it. I loved her. Our parents had always been openly proud of Sarah in a different way than they were of me. More effusive, more public about it. When she got into a top business school, my dad took everyone out to dinner. When I signed Arcline's first major client, he said, "That's great, son," and went back to watching television. I told myself it didn't matter. Maybe it did. I kept that somewhere I didn't look too often. The years between founding Arcline and the moment everything fell apart were, honestly, some of the best of my life. I had a team I trusted, genuinely trusted. My VP of operations, a woman named Dana, had been with me since year 2. She was the person who told me when I was wrong, who caught things I missed, who worked until midnight without being asked because she cared as much as I did. My lead developer, a guy named Theo, had turned down a job at a much larger firm to stay with us because he believed in what we were building. These weren't just employees. They were the architecture of the thing. We had 12 major clients by the time Sarah graduated. Annual recurring revenue was in the low 7 figures. We had office space in a building I actually liked walking into every morning. We had a culture, loose and hard-working and honest, that I had spent years nurturing carefully, the way you'd tend to something fragile. I want you to understand what that felt like, because everything that came after only makes sense if you understand what was at stake. This wasn't just a business. It was the only thing I had ever built entirely on my own terms. It was the proof, to myself maybe more than to anyone else, that I was capable of something real. That the long nights and the missed birthdays and the years of grinding had meant something. I trusted that it was safe. I trusted the people around me. I trusted my family, and that's when it started to change. Sarah joined Arcline 8 months after she graduated. I had agreed to it, reluctantly if I'm being honest, but I agreed. My parents had been enthusiastic from the beginning. "She has a business degree from a top school, Marcus. She could really help you scale." I told myself they were right. I told myself it would be good to have family involved, someone I could trust at a deeper level than any higher. I told myself a lot of things that I later had to stop believing. Her title was Director of Strategy. I created that role specifically for her. I was clear about the scope. She would work on growth planning, evaluate expansion opportunities, and report to me. I was the founder, the CEO, the person who had built this from a laptop and a rented bedroom. The organizational chart was not ambiguous. For the first few months, things were fine. Sarah had good ideas, genuinely good ones. She identified an underserved vertical we hadn't targeted, and her pitch for it was sharp. I implemented 2 of her recommendations, and they worked. I remember feeling genuinely glad she was there. But something shifted around month 4. It was gradual at first. Small things I noticed and talked myself out of. She started showing up early to team meetings and running the first 10 minutes before I arrived. I'd walk in and the room would already be in a rhythm that didn't include me. I'd mention it to her afterward, and she'd apologize lightly, laugh it off, explain that she was just trying to move things along. I let it go. Then she started going directly to clients, not looping me in on emails, representing herself, not our client herself, in conversations where I should have been present. One of our biggest clients, a healthcare logistics company we'd had for 3 years, mentioned to me offhandedly in a call that, "Your sister has really been great to work with." I hadn't known she'd been in contact with them at all. I confronted her. She told me she was just being proactive. She told me I was being territorial. She smiled the way she always smiled, warmly, without tension, like the argument I was making was slightly embarrassing, and moved on. And then came the night that I replay in my head more than any other. It was a family dinner at my parents' house, a Sunday evening in late fall. Nothing special, just the 4 of us. We'd finished eating. I was halfway through a glass of wine. My mom was clearing dishes, and then my dad set his fork down, looked at the 2 of us, and said the words I was completely unprepared for. "We've been thinking," he said, "that it might be time for Sarah to take over the leadership of the company." The room went quiet in a way that felt physical. He kept talking. He said that Sarah had a formal business education, that she understood scale in ways that and I want to get this exactly right, because I've thought about his wording many times. Someone who built something from instinct might not. He said the company needed someone who could take it to the next level. He said they'd been discussing it with Sarah for several weeks. Several weeks. They had been discussing replacing me for several weeks. My sister had been sitting across from me at work every day, taking my calls, asking about my plans, and she had known. I looked at Sarah. She didn't look away. She looked at me the way you look at someone when you've already decided, and you're just waiting for them to catch up. "This is my company," I said. My voice was very calm. I don't know why it was calm. "I built it. My name is on every founding document. What are you talking about?" My dad said, "We know that, Marcus. But family takes care of family. And right now the best thing for the family is for Sarah to lead." I had no idea what to say, so I said nothing. And that silence, that specific silence in my parents' kitchen on a Sunday in late fall, was the moment I stopped being surprised by anything that came next. The days after that dinner were some of the strangest of my life. I went into work the next morning and sat at my desk and looked at the company I had built and tried to figure out what had actually just happened. My parents were shareholders, a small stake, less than 10% combined, that I had given them years ago as a gesture of gratitude. It wasn't a controlling position. Legally, they couldn't force a leadership change on their own. But here's the thing, Sarah was already inside. She had relationships with the team. She had access to client communications. She had spent 8 months positioning herself, and I had been so deep in the work itself that I hadn't fully seen what she was doing from the outside. I called a meeting with her. Just the 2 of us, in the conference room with the glass wall that looked out over the main office floor. I needed her to tell me, clearly to my face, what she knew and when she knew it. She was composed in that meeting. Completely composed. She told me that she loved me and that this wasn't personal. She said that she and my parents genuinely believed the company needed leadership that could execute at a larger scale. She used language I recognized from business, school frameworks, the kind of phrases that sound like analysis but actually mean nothing without context. She said she hoped we could find a path forward that worked for everyone. I want to be honest about something. I doubted myself in those days. That's the part of this I've thought about the most. Because when someone you love, someone who has known you your entire life, sits across from you and tells you in calm and reasonable language that you're not the right person for the job you've been doing for 10 years, some part of you starts to ask if they're right. Not because the argument makes sense, but because the relationship makes you want to believe they have your best interests at heart. I went home that week and I made a list. Not of grievances and of facts. What I had built, what Arcline's actual performance looked like under my leadership, the revenue trajectory, the client retention rate, the team turnover rate, which was almost nothing because people wanted to stay. I lined up the facts like evidence, and I looked at them for a long time. The facts were clear. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I started paying attention differently. I noticed that my parents had begun calling Theo, my lead developer, directly. I noticed that Sarah had scheduled a one-on-one with Dana, my VP of operations, without telling me. I noticed that she had started signing some internal communications as Sarah Caldwell, Director of Strategy and Acting Co-Lead, a title I had never given her. I kept coming back to one thing: they were already acting like it was done. Like I had already been removed, and they were just waiting for the paperwork to catch up. That was the moment I understood that reasoning with them wasn't going to work. There was no negotiation they wanted to have. The decision had been made in conversations I wasn't part of, and everything that came after was just management of my reaction. I sat with that for a few days. And then I started planning. What I did next, I did carefully, methodically, without a single wasted move. I am not a dramatic person. I don't enjoy scorched earth responses or public spectacle. But I understood with a clarity that felt almost cold that I had built everything that made Arcline valuable, and that what I had built, I could take with me. Let me explain what I mean. A company like Arcline isn't just a name and a legal entity. It's relationships. It's the trust clients place in specific people. It's the institutional knowledge held by individual team members. It's the pipeline of new business, built through years of carefully maintained contacts. None of that is locked inside a company structure. It lives in people, and people make choices. Over the following 6 weeks, I had quiet, honest conversations with the people who mattered most. I started with Dana. I told her everything. What had happened at the family dinner, what I had observed since, what I believed was coming. I didn't ask her to do anything. I just told her the truth. She listened without interrupting, and when I was done, she said, "I've been waiting for you to tell me." I knew something was wrong. I talked to Theo, I talked to our 2 other senior engineers and our head of client success. I talked to 3 of our top clients, the ones with whom I had personal relationships that had nothing to do with the Arcline brand and everything to do with trust earned over years of showing up. I didn't pitch them anything. I told them what was happening, and I asked them plainly whether they'd follow me if I built something new. Every single one said yes. I want to say something important here. I wasn't acting in anger. I had moved through the anger already in those first strange days after the family dinner. What I was operating from now was something quieter, a belief that I had built something real, that I deserved to keep building, and that if the people around me chose to come with me, it was because they believed the same thing. I incorporated a new company. I filed the paperwork under a holding name that didn't signal what it was. I set up the basic infrastructure, accounts, legal entity, a skeleton website, during evenings and weekends at home, on my own time and my own equipment. I made sure every client conversation was personal and off-channel. I made sure every team conversation was candid about what I was doing and what I was not asking of them. I was not asking anyone to break a contract. I was not taking proprietary systems or confidential IP. I was walking out of a company I had founded, and I was telling the truth about it to the people whose trust I had earned. During this same period, Sarah and my parents were moving forward with their plan. There were emails about transition timelines. There was talk of a formal announcement. Sarah had begun holding what she called vision sessions with the team, sessions I wasn't invited to. I attended none of them, which I think she interpreted as resignation. As me going quiet the way I usually did when things got uncomfortable, she misread the silence completely. The morning I resigned, I arrived at the office at 7 a.m. Sarah and my parents weren't in yet. They'd planned a team breakfast that morning, a gathering I'd been told. With a kind of gentle paternalism that still makes me want to laugh, was meant to help the team get comfortable with the transition. It was scheduled for 9, I got there at 7. I gathered the handful of personal items from my desk, a photograph, a notebook I'd kept since the early days, a small plant that Dana had given me on the company's 5th anniversary. Then I sat down, and I sent an email to every member of the team, every client on our roster, and my parents. The email was brief. I told them I was resigning effective immediately. I told them I had founded a new company, that I had taken the name with me in spirit, if not in form, and that several members of the team and several key clients had chosen to join me in the new venture. I thanked everyone sincerely. I wished Arkline well. I was professional and precise and entirely without performance. Then I sent a separate message to Sarah and my parents, also brief. I told them I hoped they built something they were proud of. I told them I already had, and that's when the phone calls started. My dad called 4 times in an hour. My mom sent a message that I still haven't fully processed. Sarah, who had been arriving at 9 for weeks, showed up at the office at 7:45, and Dana told me later that she walked in and stood in the middle of the floor for a long moment, looking at the desks that were empty before she understood what had happened. Dana, Theo, both senior engineers, our head of client success, 3 of our top 12 clients, accounting for roughly 40% of our clients' annual recurring revenue. All of them had made their decision already. All they had been waiting for was me to move. The all-hands breakfast my parents had planned, the one meant to introduce Sarah as the new leader of the company they had decided to hand her, happened on schedule. I wasn't there, of course. Neither were 6 of the 14 people who should have been. I've been told it was a very quiet breakfast. My new company, I called it Meridian Systems, was profitable within 4 months. The clients we brought with us stayed. The team we built around them was sharp and motivated, and deeply loyal in the way that loyalty gets after it's been tested. Dana became my actual operations partner, not just in title but in practice. Theo built the technical infrastructure for a product we'd been dreaming about for years, but never had the bandwidth to pursue. We moved into new office space in the spring, smaller than Arkline's initially, but ours in a way that felt different. As for Arkline, I heard things, through mutual contacts and occasional professional overlap. The company struggled in the first year without its core team and key client revenue. Sarah tried hard, I believe that genuinely. But inheriting the shell of something is different from building the substance. The relationships that had held Arkline together were relationships that walked out the door with me, because they had been built with me, not with the entity. My parents and I didn't speak for nearly 8 months. When we did, the conversation was careful and not fully honest on either side. We've reached something like a détente now, cordial, occasionally warm, never quite what it was. I don't know if it will get back to what it was. I've stopped trying to predict that. Sarah and I haven't spoken at all. I don't say that with triumph. I say it the way you report a fact that you've had to sit with for a long time before it stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like clarity. You have to understand, the thing that I kept coming back to, in the months after all of this, wasn't anger. It was something more like grief. Grief for the version of my family I had believed in. Grief for the sister I thought I knew. Grief for the particular innocence of trusting people who were close to you the way I had trusted them, completely, without armor. I don't regret what I did. Not for a moment. I had built something real, and when it was threatened, I protected it the only way that made sense, by taking what was mine, in the form it actually existed in, which was the work and the relationships and the years. No one can take what's genuinely yours. They can only try to take the structure it lives in. I built the structure again. I'll build it again after that if I have to. But something, and I want to say it clearly. I don't think my parents or Sarah are evil people. I think they made a choice rooted in favoritism and assumptions, and a fundamental failure to see me clearly. That failure was theirs. Carrying it has been mine. I've been setting it down piece by piece for 2 years now. I am 33 years old. Meridian Systems is growing. My team is excellent. My mornings are mine. That's my story. Thank you for listening.